To do this rendering, you need to start in CAD and you want to go to your top view. What you're going to do is go to your editing ribbon in the Home tab and go to the section and elevation panel. Click on the vertical section button and then it's going to prompt you to draw a line through your space and then you hit enter. Then you will drag your view box beyond the exterior walls of your space. Click and hit enter again. And then one more time click outside of your floor plan to insert the flat 2D drawing of your building section. So that inserts a block just like your hidden line projection does. And what I did is I exploded that block so that I can edit it because I have some lines I do not need. I am cleaning up the columns because I do not need all these lines and they will cause a problem later on. And I also got rid of the crosshairs that were my camera and just tried to clean it up in general, either erasing or trimming lines. I also put the lines on the 0 layer because I was having problems with the black background printing, but we've solved that, and in this video you will see I just printed 2 PDF from the paper space, and that kind of solved the issues. So again, I am just cleaning up right now. I have scalloped columns, so I needed to get rid of the extra lines, and then the base of the column is just a cylinder, so I do not need all of these lines. So we are just cleaning up at the moment. Okay, so in your paper space, make sure that the paper size is 8.5 by 11. And I printed my building section at 3/32 of an inch scale. Your space will differ from mine in size and scope, so you may need a smaller or larger scale to have the building section fit appropriately. But since this is an isometric drawing, we can print this to scale, unlike perspectives, which we do not print to scale. So I'm just changing my paper size, making sure that it's going to print a PDF, letter, monochrome, and that the paper space is set to 1:1 scale. I renamed the paper size, or paper space tab to letter so that I knew the paper size. And as I said before, I changed the viewport to 3/32 of an inch scale because that is what fit for my space. Once I did that, I printed, and then we can move on to Photoshop. Okay, in Photoshop, just go ahead and file open, Find your PDF that you just saved. And we start by rotating our image 90 degrees counterclockwise. I'll then adjust the brightness and contrast of the PDF just so I can see the lines a bit better. Ultimately, this isn't going to have a huge impact because we're going to cover a lot of the lines, but it just helps me to see, and it also will help if I need to use the magic wand to create a stronger boundary. So first step in this process, once you get into Photoshop and have adjusted the image, is to create the pochés. So remember, poché is just filling in, and we fill in anything that we cut through. So I will be pocheing my floor, my ceiling, any walls that I've cut through, any doors I've cut through, any columns, beams, etc. Anything I cut through, I poché. And I'm just doing that by using the magic wand, selecting areas I want to fill in, and then just using the paint bucket to fill in with black. Now keep in mind that I created a layer, a new layer, just for poché. And you'll see in a little bit that I actually go through and rename it so that I can refer back to it if I need to. So I cut to the point where I've got everything pochéed, and I am changing the name of my line drawing layer to line drawing. Poché layer is now called poché, and I'm going to start next with applying textures. So I just went online, Googled wood texture, concrete texture, marble texture, whatever I needed for really the walls and any vertical plane. And then I'm going to do the same thing that I did when we were rendering a perspective using Photoshop, but this time I don't have to force perspective. Everything is flat. So I'm just going to scale my material down so that is appropriate in ratio to my space. And then I will tile it and rearrange it so that it fills the entire door. So that's just what I'm doing now, copying the layer, moving it, copying the layer, moving it, copying the layer, moving it until I have the entire door filled with this texture. And periodically I will merge those layers so that I don't end up with a bazillion layers because ultimately I just want the door layer to be one layer. And right now I'm not worrying about whether I'm extending or going beyond the edges of my door because I will cut that once I am finished with the tiling process. So again, now that I have the whole door covered, I'm going to merge those layers and rename it the left door material, wood. And I am using the clone stamp because it did look like it was a little too obvious that this wood texture had been tiled. So I am just using the clone stamp to make the pattern or wood grain a little bit more random and organic as opposed to this very repetitive pattern that I have going on now. So remember, with the clone stamp, press Alt and click to choose what you want to clone, and then let go of Alt and just paint like you would with the paintbrush to actually duplicate that clone. Sorry. Alright, so now that I have that done, I'm just copying that over to the other side of my door. So I just duplicated that layer and I dragged it over. And now I'm going to rename that layer so that I know which one is the right door and which one is the left. If you can, try to rename your layers as you go because you will end up with quite a few layers, and it's a lot easier to rename them now than it will be to have to go back and forth trying to figure out which layer it is you need. Once I have that done, I'm going to go ahead and fill the glass portion of my doors. And with this, I'm just going to use a solid color. I am not finding a glass texture. Glass textures are more difficult to find, especially if you do need to tile them because they're because of their translucency, it's hard to find one that isn't shaded in some way. So again, work smarter, not harder. Instead of isolating each area, filling it, I have one done, and now I'm going to just copy it. Merge those layers and then duplicate them so that you can have the same on the other side. Rename that layer. Excuse me. And now that I've duplicated that layer and dragged it back over to the left, I'm going to rename that as well so that I know which one's the left one and which one's the right one. Okay, so I fast forwarded a bit. I've gone ahead and placed the textures for my exterior walls and the walls the doors are set in. And right now I'm going ahead and applying a drywall texture to the part of this wall that is stepped out from the door walls. And so I could just duplicate that layer and tile it like you saw before. But I can also just use the clone stamp, especially since this layer or this texture really doesn't have any pattern to it. Not that, no pattern that is actually discernible. It's a very fairly subtle texture. So the clone stamp works great for it. I just keep on pressing Alt and clicking to choose my target clone spot, so choosing where I want to clone from, and then letting go of Alt to press and kind of fill the rest of the space with that texture. So it's pretty easy. Once I'm done, I will clean up, so you can see I'm not really concerned about overlapping, going beyond my lines, because I'll clean this up once I'm done, and then we'll go on to the next step. And I could just draw right on top of this instead of cutting out the material. As you can see, I put in more of that solid blue just to indicate where the glass is. And I'm adding to my poche. You'll see in a second that I decide before I finish doing this that I'm going to go ahead and crop this section. So typically with a building section, you could possibly put some plants and trees around the exterior part that project above or beyond the exterior edge of your section. But I'm going to just make everything but the section black, so that really emphasizes and draws your eye to the building section. So that's what I'm doing. And again, the process is the same as before, and I'm doing this right on the poche layer. Is just isolating the area and using the paint bucket and filling it with black. And for the rest of it, you'll see I just used the magic wand, clicked on the outside portion of it, and filled with black. And then anywhere I missed or anywhere where there's material above that, I just cut it. Okay, so I skipped a bit of a step here. What I did is I went and found a landscape. In my case, it was just the mountains. And I put that layer behind my materials layer so that you could see it through the windows of those exterior walls. And I'm just playing with the saturation, the color or tint of this image to, right now I'm just playing with how it looks. I want to fade it to the background. I will fiddle a little bit more with it as I go. Um, but if you want, if you have any windows or um, any element opening in your building section where you want to be able to see out to the exterior, this is a great way to indicate that, especially if it's glass doors or that type of thing. This is a great way to indicate that is showing the exterior, the view. So just find a shot of that landscape or view that you want to include and place it in. So also, I brought in some trees, and if you Google tree PNG or flower PNG or bush PNG, anything PNG, you can find images that have no background. So PNGs are similar to JPEGs, but they're non-compressed, so they're a higher quality image, and generally that allows you to have no background. So true, I could have just gone in and cut out the background, but this makes my life a little bit easier not having to do that. So I placed that tree and I'm just scaling it down so I can kind of glimpse that through the windows. And I'll copy one onto the other side, and then again I play with the color, light, and opacity of these. And then I get rid of an extra bit of that tree that I don't want to see beyond the exterior of my building section. Okay, so once you have that, the next step is to start adding shadows. And it's really easy to do this. Just isolate one area at a time and think about where there is going to be natural shadows. You can use the marquee tool, the lasso tool, the magic wand tool, whatever you need to isolate that area. So I'm going to slowly but surely isolate this first section of my space. I'm going to make sure I don't have the windows selected or any area where I could see through, because those will not have shadows unless they had glass panes, but these are open, so they have no glass panes. And I'm going to actually just paint in shadows once I finish isolating the stairs here. And I just do that by using the paintbrush tool, making sure that the edge is 100% or 0% hard, and just changing the scale. And I'm using black, and I will change the opacity. And I am shading in wherever there are going to be shadows. So corners are going to be in shadow. Anywhere you have the floor and wall meet, the wall and ceiling meet, doors, walls, ceilings, wherever those meet, there's going to be shadows. This column, the point of that column that is closest to us where it rounds will be in shadow. So I will be filling all of those in with shadow. Okay, so once I have that done, you can see I'm playing with the blending mode, and then I will also knock down the opacity. But once I zoom out, you'll see how much depth that immediately adds to my section. Okay, so I've gone ahead and added shadow to the interior of my space. And what I'm doing now is, since my space is symmetrical, this exterior entrance to my space, I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to just mirror it and move it over so that is the same on the other side. So that's edit, transform, flip horizontal, and then I just move over. For my glass, I did add shadow for that as well, because there would be shadows projected onto the glass pane. And I'm going to go back and darken it a little bit using a blue color as opposed to the black, just to kind of help with the illuminance of the glass. So just a little bit of an illusion creating here. And I actually used a lighter color to highlight the top of it, and um, again, just to help with the sense of luminance of the glass. And I decided to go back and fiddle with the background just a bit more. I wanted to play around with the colors and that type of thing. And you can see I got a little bit lazy and started adding layers without naming them. So now I am changing um, the names of the layers so that I can know what they are, because layers 1 through 50 gets really confusing very easily. So now I added a layer for lighting, and like with the shadows, it's just painting with the paintbrush, but instead of black I'm going to use white, and we'll play with the blending modes as well. So right now I'm adjusting the shape of my brush and rotating it because I want it to be more like a spotlight as opposed to a perfect circle. And I'm just envisioning some downlights above the door in that little recess there. And then I played with the blending mode. And so anywhere where I pictured there be lighting, I added white. So through the skylight, on the exterior, light coming in from those windows, and then light projected up on the edges of the stairs, some light being shined down onto that middle wall there. And I should have just copied this side over again, but I didn't, so you'll see me go ahead and do the other side by hand as well. So what I did is I actually duplicated that lighting layer because duplicating it and then playing with the blending modes can help to intensify it. And once you have the light in, the next step is to put your scale figures. So if you just Google people silhouettes, you can find several, and the black and white is great because it's easy to isolate the silhouette and the background. So I was just going about trying to figure out the best way to do that. I ended up just using the magic wand, clicking on the actual silhouette, cutting it, getting rid of that layer, and then pasting it so that I just had the silhouette on a new layer. And then scale it down, put it into place, and that's pretty much it for the silhouette. So I brought in 2 scale figures and make sure that they are scaled proportionally. Okay, so I could leave it at this, but the last step I'm going to do is to add some final detail. Bring in some art for the wall, uh, a table for the um, wall below the art, and then some pendant lights for the exterior for that entrance. Um, so that's pretty easy. The art, I just pull in, I get rid of the background, and then give it a little bit of a shadow. When you do add furniture, if you do, remember to add shadows cast by that furniture so that the furniture looks like it is supposed to be there. Make sure to cast shadow on the furniture or light depending on where you place it. And also make sure that you get rid of any perspective on that furniture or any of the elements. So the artwork was pretty easy because it was a straight on shot. But when I place my table, you'll see that I remove the top of the table and the back legs that we see so that it will look like it is in elevation, just like my building section. So when you look for furniture, if you're looking for furniture, you need to make sure that you find one that's relatively straight on. If your furniture came from CAD, then just apply materials like you did uh, with the walls. So to add the drop shadow, I just double clicked on that layer, and if you check drop shadow, you can then click on the drop shadow name to adjust the size of the shadow, the strength of the shadow, and how soft it is. So you can see when I click on drop shadow, here I can change the opacity of the shadow, I can change the direction of the shadow, how smooth it fades out. So that's a really quick way to add shadow to something if it is projected outside of projected from a surface. And I just needed to clean up the edges a bit here, so I just used the rectangular marquee tool to do that. So again, just to reiterate, find a shot of a piece of furniture if you're placing it in and not bringing the flat shot from CAD. Find an image that is fairly straight on, and then you will have to remove any perspective. So I remove the background, of course, and then I'm going to remove those back legs so that you can't see them. Once I've done that, I'm going to scale it, and I will add shadow below it to show that the table is casting shadow. And I'm bringing in also a vase flowers just to add a little bit more detail. Generally, you don't want to go overboard with detail, but adding some detail can help the client relate and understand how the space will be used. So you want to make sure that you add a few pieces to make the space look more lived in. And this shot didn't need too much perspective removed. I just flattened the base and the top of the vase so that it wasn't rounded and did not look like it was in perspective. And you can see I still got a little bit lazy with my layers and the naming of them. So don't do what I do, do as I say. So adding some final shadow underneath the table, shadow underneath the orchids, a little bit more shadow underneath the painting or the piece of art. And then I went on to add pendant lights on the exterior above the openings, as you can see, um, to finish it off. And then I just saved that Photoshop file as a PDF. So the steps are poche, materials, shadow, light, backgrounds, silhouette, and final details. So if you can create that checklist, you should be good. And any questions, let us know.